Good evening, everybody. A number of breaking news stories tonight. In Northern California, Governor Jerry Brown has declared a state of emergency in wine country. That's Napa, Sonoma, and Yuba counties, as firefighters struggle to contain 15 major wildfires burning out of control. The fast-moving fires have killed at least one person, destroyed hundreds of homes and businesses, and forced 20,000 people to evacuate. We'll have the latest details for you here tonight. Also, Sunday night football ratings continue to decline as players insult our anthem, our flag, and our nation. Last night, some of the 49ers refused to stand for the flag and the anthem, and Colts players did stand, but they stood with their arms interlocked during the anthem. Vice President Mike Pence and his wife walked out, refusing to put up with the insults to the nation and its symbols. Just when it looked as though the owners and players were coming to their senses, it's clear Commissioner Goodell has given the players the okay to protest during our national anthem. In other news tonight, President Trump unveiling a 70-point list of immigration demands to be met if Congress is to push through immigration reforms, especially DACA. The proposal calls for a crackdown on unaccompanied minors who enter the U.S., cutting funding to sanctuary cities, and hiring 10,000 more immigration enforcement agents. It also seeks to protect American workers by mandating E-Verify and overhauling the green card system to end chain migration. But details on those parts of the plan are certainly not clear at this point. Democrats, as expected, simply hating the proposal. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi releasing a statement saying the plan strays from a deal they discussed with the president last month. Their statement, their joint statement, says in part, quote, "We told the president at our meeting that we were open to reasonable border security measures alongside the DREAM Act, but this list goes so far beyond what is reasonable, this proposal fails to represent any attempt at compromise." Trump administration officials arguing these provisions will cut down on illegal immigration, and the administration is urging Congress to include all of them in any bill addressing DACA. Joining us tonight, Jessica Vaughn. She's Director of Policy Studies for the Center for Immigration Studies. And Jessica, good to have you with us. This is a long list. It is an important list. Your reaction to it, and what do you think will be the reaction in the halls of Congress?
It is a long list, but there are a lot of things wrong with our immigration system, both in border security and interior enforcement, and our legal immigration system that many Americans support but think needs to be modernized and needs to be trimmed back a little bit. This is a to-do list for Congress. I think this is really the president saying, like a parent says to a small child at dinner, you've got to eat your fresh, healthy vegetables and fix the things that are wrong with our immigration system before you get that Twinkie of an amnesty for dessert.
Yeah, well, it's more than a Twinkie. That's a whole dessert table, and one that's right, unappetizing to millions and millions of Americans. It is, at the same time, a proposal that opens up the discussion on DACA. DACA itself is illegal. It is unconstitutional. We know that. And yet here we are watching Congress and the president start horse trading, at least the early stages of it, over its survival.
Well, the president didn't include an amnesty for people with DACA as a priority in this list of things, but clearly this is the priority for the Democrats in the House and the Senate, and that's distressing to see that amnesty is more important to them than these very necessary common sense reforms that Americans want to see happen, that are in America's best interest, and that will give us an immigration system with some integrity going forward that we can all be proud of and support. Yeah. They don't seem to be willing to budge off of their position. But if they care so much about amnesty, then they should be willing to also do these common sense reforms, because we've done this before. If we don't make these necessary changes to our immigration system. And these are things on this list that Congress has to do. The president cannot do this by himself. He's started.
Not lawfully. We saw President Obama do so, but not lawfully. Let me say this.
That's right.
We've been at this for some time now. Actively on Capitol Hill, moving through the legislative process since 2006. The Kennedy-McCain legislation was a disaster, in large measure because of chain migration and changing the rules about who could come in. And their basic tenet was anyone in the family, extended as far as the imagination could carry the left, would be fine. This does raise chain migration. It is an apparent opening bid to end it. Your thoughts?
Well, I think curbing chain migration and getting rid of the unnecessary visa lottery program are the most important things that could happen in concert with any DACA amnesty if that is to happen. Every new immigrant to this country sponsors an average of more than 3 additional immigrants through chain migration. This is a recipe
you're
for
being
ever
very
increasing.
conservative here, Jessica. This is the studies that I have seen show in legal immigration. The average is 6. And dependent, these illegal immigrants come in, they are so dependent upon the family that is here, friends and others, one would think that number would be significantly higher.
It is for some groups, particularly certain parts of the world, Latin America and China. Immigrants from those places have in the past brought an average of more than 6 additional immigrants through chain migration.
And we should point out for those who are not aware, the majority of people entering the country illegally in the most recent year were from China, from Mexico. That makes up the majority of illegal immigration into this country. Let me ask you this final question, if I may. No discussion of a wall has been entertained in Congress. That's when we're talking about a Congress that's led by the Republican Party. No discussion of a wall, border security, or the agents that the president has asked for. Any change, any hope of immigration reform, is it not still utterly dependent upon first securing the border and assuring the sovereignty of the nation?
Yes, we have to secure the border because of illegal immigration and also the flow of illicit drugs into American communities, and to keep those American communities along the border safe.
Yeah.
And that has to be a prerequisite. It shouldn't be negotiable for anything. It should be Congress's job to provide the president with the resources that he needs to get that done.
You and I, veterans of the immigration and illegal immigration, open borders and border security wars, know very well it has not been for a very long time. Jessica Vaughn, great to have you with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Growing outrage tonight over NFL players who continue to insult our flag. Vice President Mike Pence leaving the Colts 49ers game over player protests. More than 20 players for the San Francisco 49ers showing their disrespect, insulting and refusing to stand during the national anthem. With Colts players locking their arms during the anthem, the vice president tweeted this: "I left today's Colts game because the president and I will not dignify any event that disrespects our soldiers, our flag, or our national anthem." Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones also fighting back this time. Instead of kneeling with his players, he issued a warning to his players who insult the flag.
There is no equivocation here. We'll stand for the flag. If there's anything that is disrespectful to the flag, then we will not play.
The Miami Dolphins also issued a rule requiring their players to stand for the national anthem or remain in the locker room. The Philadelphia Eagles may need a rule, at least 3 of their players raising their fists, as you see here, in a Black Power salute last night. We are coming back with much more on that story, all of the top news of the day. Stay with us. President Trump expected to announce his decision to decertify the disastrous Iran nuclear deal this week.
The Iran deal is terrible, should have never been made. It should have never. It leads to nuclear weapons for Iran in a short period of time.
We'll take up the fallout of decertification of the deal. Ed Rollins joins us. And California declares a state of emergency. Raging wildfires consuming wine country, San Francisco covered in smoke. The fast-moving fires forcing more than 20,000 people to evacuate. We'll have the latest for you and much more straight ahead. Stay with us. California Governor Jerry Brown today declared a state of emergency in Napa, Yuba, and Sonoma counties as several wildfires continue to rage through wine country, including Mendocino County, which has not yet been declared a disaster area. More than 1,500 homes, businesses destroyed. That has prompted the evacuation, as I said earlier, of roughly 20,000 residents. Fox News correspondent Claudia Cowan is in Sonoma County and has the latest for us. Claudia.
Thousands of firefighters from across the state are now battling this massive wildfire that just erupted overnight, taking out tinder-dry hillsides and structures like this one. This used to be a dairy. It's been here for many, many decades. More than 1,500 homes and businesses have been damaged or destroyed as fierce, erratic winds pushed the flames over mountain ridges and highways, scorching more than 75,000 acres in Calistoga, Napa, and Santa Rosa, and prompting massive evacuations. Some 20,000 people are out of their homes. Many said they fled for their lives in the middle of the night. Some did not make it. There's at least one confirmed death from a fire in Mendocino County, about 100 miles away. The sheriff there saying there could be multiple fatalities, and many residents are unaccounted for and listed as missing. While those fierce wind gusts have died down, a red flag warning remains in effect at least through Tuesday because of the warm, dry conditions, and the governor of California has declared a state of emergency. Lou?
Claudia, thank you very much. Claudia Cowan. Southern California is also in crisis. Officials there are trying to contain a deadly outbreak of hepatitis A, which has killed 17, sickened more than 500 in San Diego. It has now spread to Los Angeles, to San Francisco. It is on the verge of being declared a statewide epidemic. Well, turning now to politics, retiring Republican Senator Bob Corker spent the weekend lobbing, Twitter insults at the president. The Tennessee lawmaker said Sunday the president is, in his opinion, running a reality show and could send the nation on the path to World War III. A little hyperbole gripping the senator, and for whatever reason. On Saturday, Senator Corker also called the White House an adult daycare center. The president summed up the situation this way, tweeting, "Bob Corker gave us the Iran deal, and that's about it. We need health care, we need tax cuts and reform. We need people who can get the job done." Joining us now, Ed Rollins, chairman of the Great America PAC, who served at the top level of 2 White House administrations as assistant to the president. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Bob Corker, what in the world is he doing?
Well, the unfortunate thing is Bob Corker's there for 2 more years. He's determined not to run for re-election, which is certainly his prerogative. But if he's going to become the in-house critic as chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, it's just a big platform for him to basically dump on the president, and I think it's just outrageous.
We got to be clear. The reason he's going to be there is because of Mitch McConnell.
Absolutely. So
and McConnell could end this nonsense.
That's the point.
Right
That was the point I was going to make. The conference needs to basically bring him in. You can argue, you can disagree on votes, but you can't have a major chairman of your own party criticizing the president on his foreign policy and anything else.
And he looks so small, so insulting and petty, and I mean, a crack about a daycare center, World War III. I mean, he looks moronic.
Well, no one tweets quite like the president, so the rest of them shouldn't try.
I think that's well said. Let's turn to the 70 points for immigration reform. The president laying this out for DACA. Now, DACA, as I said earlier, we know it's illegal, it's unconstitutional, and yet here it is. The president has proffered an opportunity for the left to save DACA.
Well, DACA shouldn't be the only negotiating point here. The interesting thing is last time was one of those White Houses in 1986 was the last immigration bill that's been passed in this country. Both Obama and George W. Bush, with majorities of their own party, tried to do comprehensive immigration, couldn't get it through. I think at this point in time, you have to understand there's a give and take in this. If Schumer and those guys want something, then obviously the president's going to get what he wants. So these 70 points are the beginning points from his perspective. Obviously, it's not him sitting down in the corner office and writing this out. These are things that people in the field feel is very, very important to do this. This needs we need one more big comprehensive program. We should do it well, and it's going to take time to put it together. And that means
I think the idea of a comprehensive program, every time the left has, and of course business interests on the extreme right, have cried out for comprehensive immigration. It becomes a catch-all for every kind of nonsense except getting to the point, which is we need to secure our borders, we need to control immigration, we need to end, and the list goes on, those 70 points in addition. But to have any discussion about immigration reform without the ability to control immigration is madness.
Well, your point is so valid because every single kid here under DACA, or young adult, came in after the '86 bill. There's nobody who was here before.
Right.
You had 2.5 million people out of a possibility of 5 who could come in and took advantage of it, but they didn't do the security side. And I think to a certain extent, and they just sort of dismissed it over time.
And this is such a compelling demagogued issue. But the fact is, those 800,000 DACA enrollees, most of them, the vast majority of them, over 70%, are on welfare of one form or another. And people have to be honest about what's going on here. We've got to take control of that immigration system, as the president campaigned on, and reward talent and skills that are needed in this country.
Well, he tapped into the mood of the country, which was basically an anti-immigration, anti-illegal immigration sentiment, and I think it wasn't something he just made up out of the top of his head. So I think to a certain extent, if you're going to put this through, it's not what Chuck Schumer wants or Nancy Pelosi wants.
That's a shame.
It's basically what the country wants.
Yeah, I imagine that. What the country needs, as the president has outlined it,
right? Not
what Schumer and Pelosi want, or it's ridiculous how much this discussion already resembles 2006.
Absolutely, no question about that.
Ed Rollins, as always.
My pleasure.
Good to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Be sure to vote in our poll tonight, and the question is, do you believe NFL football fans should follow Vice President Pence's lead and walk out, demanding a refund when NFL players insult the national anthem and the country itself? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook and Instagram, Lou Dobbs Tonight there. And on Wall Street, stocks moving a little lower. The Dow off 13 points, the S&P down 5, the Nasdaq lost 10. Volume on the big board, light trading, 2.4 billion shares. GE shares hitting a 2-year low, giving activist investor Tryon a seat on the board after Jeffrey Immelt's departure. GE stock down more than 40% under Immelt. Tesla plunging nearly 4% today as the electric car maker fails to deliver on its latest Model 3. And a reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. Up next, we finally know what it takes for ESPN to suspend an employee. We're coming right back with that and much more. The commentary is coming up here next. Stay with us. Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones taking a stand against the player protests against our national anthem, our flag, and our country. But ESPN host Jameel Hill, who seems intent on insulting the president and the ESPN audience, chose to encourage a boycott, tweeting this: "This play always work," that's her word. "Change happens when advertisers are impacted. If you feel strongly about Jerry Jones' statement, boycott his advertiser." Hill even claimed an unfair burden has been placed on NFL players in Dallas and Miami because players risk being benched if they don't stand respectfully for the national anthem. Apparently, she thinks it's unfair to be respectful to the flag and the nation The result, ESPN announced it'll be suspending Hill for 2 weeks, citing a second violation of the company's social media guidelines. Of course, the sagging leader in sports only taking action when it affects their bottom line, prospectively at least. The sports network pays nearly $2 billion a year to the NFL for broadcast rights. But when she insulted President Trump last month, ESPN did absolutely nothing, warning the host about her conduct. It's no wonder the ESPN is struggling, losing subscribers, facing higher costs and a decline in ad revenue. And that's where we are in this NFL player-led protest. These protesting NFL players are such ingrates that they and some of the sportscasters who cover them believe that standing for the national anthem, hand over heart, constitutes some form of, are you ready, oppression. Good grief. Our quotation of the evening, this one from George Bernard Shaw. He said this: power does not corrupt men. Fools, however, if they get into a position of power, corrupt power. We're coming right back. Stay with us. President Trump criticizing the ineptitude of the Obama administration's North Korea policy. We take up the president's tough talk and tougher policy against the rogue regime. Gordon Chang joins us next. And this daredevil motorcyclist pulling off a spectacular stunt over the Thames River. We'll show you the gravity-defying and stomach-churning video here next. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Russia and China are urging President Trump to stay in the Iran nuclear deal. Russia, in fact, warning of what they are calling negative consequences if the United States were to pull out of that deal. China claims the deal plays an important role in keeping global peace. President Trump is expected to decertify that deal later this week. The president today reiterated his position that diplomacy doesn't work with North Korea. He tweeted this, quote, "Our country has been unsuccessfully dealing with North Korea for 25 years, giving billions of dollars and getting nothing. Policy didn't work." Kim Jong-un over the weekend defended his country's nuclear weapons program, saying it's a powerful deterrent that guarantees its sovereignty. Joining me now, Asia expert Gordon Chang, a Forbes.com contributor and great American. Good to have you here.
Thanks so much, Lou.
I think it's interesting that the national left-wing media is not giving President Trump credit. It seems that there are positive results, and certainly they're not determinate, but early positive results from his reaching out to President Xi Jinping on North Korea.
Yeah, well, certainly. I mean, the Chinese have said that they ordered the banks to stop some, not all, but some of their economic relations and their financial relationships with North Korea. That was certainly an important positive. And I think that was the result of President Trump on June 29th severing a small Chinese bank from the global financial system. That was an important step forward. Also, we have President Trump on his September 21 executive order, which is a major step forward. It's, I think, one of the most important things that any American leader has done on North Korea. So this is significant, and I think that President Trump has got a lot of work to do, but nonetheless, he's moving in the right direction on that.
And he is the only president to ever move as decisively and as straightforwardly with a Chinese president on the issue of their client state, which is, if not puppet state outright, North Korea. He also admonished his military leaders, as you know, saying at a dinner at the White House, he needs options faster. He needs the military leaders, including General Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, to make things happen, to push against the bureaucracy. Your reaction?
Yeah, we saw evidence of Mattis actually moving in response to what President Trump said last week, because as Mattis was talking to the Army, that they've got to be ready immediately. And that's important because, you know, U.S. Forces Korea, their motto is fight tonight. And when I was in Korea at the end of June, I heard General Vincent Brooks, who's the commander of USFK, talk about this not being just a slogan, but as actually a state of being. It's a way of life for American forces, and it's important for Mattis to instill that sense of urgency across the U.S. Armed Forces.
You have the instinct here, at least the sense that the General Mattis was talking to forces outside of Korea. Because those forces would come into play, it appears, in quick order. It is troubling to hear Mattis say to develop options rather than have them ready right now. That seemed to me to be a peculiar expression. I don't know what he meant. Do you?
No, I don't, and I picked that up as well. Right now, we have the Ronald Reagan, which is a Nimitz-class carrier, moving into position off of North Korea's east coast. This is important because that's, that's 4.2 acres of sovereign American territory, very close to North Korea.
And 3 other carrier strike forces in the region, and prepared to participate should the president order a military intervention.
Yes, and this is consequential, of course. I think what Mattis is trying to do is, as you mentioned, instill that sense of urgency, across the Pentagon, because I'm not so sure that it's there. People in Korea, they understand what's going on. I'm not so sure that everybody else does, because we have this sense, oh, this is not such a big deal. But I think that, of course, it is.
I would hope that there isn't that dissonance between the Pentagon and the White House, because if all of the departments that should be ready to act on the president's order instantly, it should be them.
Yeah. Well, North Korea can always take us by surprise. They've done that so many times. They grabbed the Pueblo, they shot down that Navy reconnaissance plane over international water, they hacked to death those 2 Army colonels in the DMZ. They took us by surprise on all 3 of those incidents. And, we've been better since then. But in 2010, the North Koreans sunk that South Korean frigate. They shelled that island. This took us, not only the South Koreans, but it took, the Washington by surprise. So we've got to be very careful with them.
I think that they have to be very careful with us as well.
Of course.
Thanks to President Trump. I don't think they've quite taken his measure yet, and I'm not so sure they want to.
Well, clearly the Chinese, I think, have reacted very carefully to the president because they don't know what he's going to do, and that's a good thing.
Well, he did describe a calm before a storm, which I'm sure was noted in Tehran as well as in Pyongyang. Thank you very much, Gordon Chang.
Thanks, Lou.
Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. Do you believe football fans should follow Vice President Pence's lead and walk out, demanding a refund when NFL players insult the national anthem in the country? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Please roll the video. There's a reason Travis Pastrana is a superstar in extreme sports. And this is one of the reasons. He nails the 75-foot motorcycle backflip between 2 barges in London's Thames River. He stops his bike on a dime, despite having less than 40 feet of room. I mean, that's amazing. Again, I ask why. Why? But I say thank you at the same time. Up next, growing backlash against the GOP establishment and its leaders, if you can use the term that loosely, over their failure to accomplish anything for this president. Kelly Ward challenging Rhino Senator Jeff Flake. She joins us here next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Former White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon targeting incumbent Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, trying to unseat the anti-Trump Republican next year. Both Bannon and the mega donor Mercer family are early backers of Flake's opponent, former state Senator Dr. Kelly Ward. Polls last month showed Ward with a 14-point lead over Flake. We're joined now by former Arizona State Senator Dr. Kelly Ward, and it's great to have you with us. Let's start, Doctor, with how you think this is going to unfold. Flake has got a lot of money behind him, the GOP establishment, as you know. You've seen this movie before.
Lou, I'm so glad to be here tonight with you, and you're exactly right. We have seen the movie, and I think that's what led to the frustration across this country that gave us a President Donald Trump. People are really, really tired of the swamp. They're tired of the status quo, and they're looking for, revolutionary, transformational leaders to go to Washington, D.C. and put this America First agenda into play to bring the policy forward. And Jeff Flake simply cannot do it, will not do it.
He refuses to do it. He's a never Trumper, I think it would be fair to call him. And what is it that in your judgment, your greatest appeal to replace Flake in the Senate?
You know, I think the place where we vary the most, besides our, he does not support President Trump and
Right.
I do, is on immigration and on the border. I want a secure border. I want to build the wall. I want to stop illegal immigration. I consider myself an Americanist. From what we've seen from Senator Flake, he's very weak on the border. President Trump said so himself in a tweet, that he is weak on the border. He's for open borders and amnesty, and that's just unacceptable, not just in Arizona, but across our whole country.
The GOP establishment itself, how do you think it's going to sort out? I want to get a sense of, if you will, your sense of the midterm elections, the role of the establishment, how tough it's going to be for challengers to the orthodoxy and the establishment, the elites, for all of the country.
You know, I think that people have woken up, and the forgotten man and woman are no longer forgotten. The race in Alabama with Judge Roy Moore winning, it's a harbinger for what's going to happen across this entire nation. I love to hear that there are people out there who are looking to replace every establishment, ineffective Republican in the Senate. And I'm glad Senator Ted Cruz is out of those crosshairs, but I think that a lot of the other people aren't getting the job done, and people are simply sick and tired of it. I look forward to getting to Washington and doing the job that we all want done.
And do you see this as being a wave midterm election?
I do. I certainly do. And I hope that the leadership in Washington...
That is the anti-establishment wave.
Yes, and I think the establishment would have us believe that Democrats are going to swoop in and take these seats. That simply is not the case. I think we are going to see a huge wave of conservative Republican thinkers who are thinking along the nationalist populist lines that put America first. People that want to secure the border, that want to stop illegal immigration, that want to repeal Obamacare, that want the tax code fixed, and they want it fixed now, who want to make sure that our Border Patrol has everything that they need to be able to be successful and make sure that America is safe. People that want those things are going to go to Washington, and we're going to get the work done.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being with us. Look forward to talking to you throughout the campaign. Dr. Kelly Ward, thanks so much.
Thanks, Lou.
Well, it's been nearly 3 weeks since Hurricane Maria made landfall in Puerto Rico, and roughly 85% of that island is still without power. 40% of residents there don't have drinking water. A quarter of all grocery stores remain closed. Now, the island's outdated electrical grid, long neglected by corrupt local and island politicians, we're told now will take months and an estimated $5 billion to fix. San Juan Mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz is continuing her politically motivated criticisms of relief efforts, but FEMA Director Brock Long says he tuned her out long ago.
We filtered out the mayor a long time ago. We don't have time for the political noise. The bottom line is that we are making progress every day in conjunction with the governor.
Up next, the left-wing national media still covering for the Obama administration. We'll show you the real travel scandal coming up here next. Stay with us. Niger Ennis and Rachel Campos-Duffy join me next. We'll be right back. In our online poll last week, we asked, should the special counsel pivot from President Trump to Mark Zuckerberg in his quest for Russian collusion? 95% of you say you think that would be a very good idea. Finding out how much advertising was on Facebook bought by the Russians. The U.S. Inspector General has launched at least 5 investigations into travel by Trump cabinet members. Energy Secretary Rick Perry, EPA head Scott Pruitt, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin among those under scrutiny. The investigators may also want to put Obama's cabinet under scrutiny as well, because as you see there, they had quite an advantage. The administration took 94 military flights in its first 8 months compared with 77 for the Trump team. The Obama administration also spent nearly $1 million on non-military charter flights during his 2 terms. Well, joining me now, Fox News contributor Rachel Campos-Duffy, national spokesperson for the Congress on Racial Equality, conservative commentator Niger Ennis. Rachel, good to have you both with us. And let me start, Rachel, with you. The president has put forward an initial bargaining position on comprehensive immigration reform. What are the odds of its passage?
Well, it depends on if the Democrats care more about hitting Trump and their political shenanigans than they care about the DACA people that they claim that they've been fighting for 8 years. I mean, this is a negotiation. I think he put forward, in Trump style, some things he probably doesn't expect to get, but the American people have made it clear they are willing to help the DACA dreamers, if you will, if there's going to be border security and interior security with it.
What do you think, Niger?
Well, you know, unlike a lot of folk on the left who talk about dreamers and hypotheticals, or as and use dreamers, quite frankly, as a political weapon. I've actually talked with dreamers and communicated with dreamers, and they're very, very concerned about their future. And you know, President Trump has done an outstanding thing by saying, look, Congress, you're going to do your job. You have to pass legislation. This is not going to be done through some executive action that is constitutionally shaky. And I think Rachel is exactly right. Democrats have got to make the determination: do they want to actually help these dreamers that qualify to legitimately have legal status? That doesn't mean citizenship, but legal status, so that they can work and they can go to school and they can have some peace of mind at the end of the day. Because I can tell you point blank from folk that I've talked to, they're very, very concerned. So Democrats, the ball is in your court.
Yeah, and frankly, I think, Rachel, that the president has made it very clear what he wants. And we know what Schumer wants, which is everything. The left has grown accustomed over this debate, battle over illegal immigration and open borders since 2006 in particular. They insist that they get citizenship, a path to citizenship, wide open borders, forgiveness of just about everything, or some pittance in the way of some kind of fine. This is an attitude of entitlement on the part of the left in this country on the issue of illegal immigration. The president, if he accepts it, he would get rolled on the wall, on enforcement, on the 10,000 ICE agents that he's asking for, e-verify. This is not a problem that has to be perpetuated. But don't you think that you have to insist on border security and the wall and e-verify, all of it being in place before you begin immigration reform?
Well, what's interesting is the American people have said very clearly, in the election, they said, we want immigration reform, but we want border security first. And they have also said, in very large numbers, over 80%, we also want to do something with DACA. And I think that the president is actually reflecting what the American people want. And I think when you say the Democrats want everything, you know what I think the Democrats really want? They want nothing to happen. I tell you this as a Hispanic woman, they love this. They want this immigration reform to never get off the table, because I've told you this before, Lou. When you take immigration off the table, Hispanics look like conservatives. They look like Republicans. So they don't want a deal for the DACA dreamers. They want this issue to continue to fester and boil, and they want to blame Republicans for it.
I understand, but my question was, should the president be insisting on all border security provisions being in place before?
He has to. He has to.
Of course. Of course. That's what the American people want.
I mean, the president got elected on an America First immigration party, platform rather. All right, and that means stopping illegal immigration, bringing about border security, but it also means having an immigration policy that is good not just for the immigrants that want to come into the country, but good for the American people, good for our economy, good for the American worker, so that immigration, too much even legal immigration, doesn't depress wages of the American people that are here. And yes, Lou, you're absolutely right. I know for a fact that the base of the party, the loyalists to President Trump, would not tolerate any kind of comprehensive program without border security and without guaranteeing that we're not visiting this question yet again some 10 years from now.
Will the leadership of the Republican Party, forget the Democratic Party, Rachel, will they accept border security, a wall, and enforcement of that security as a condition precedent to immigration reform?
Of course. I mean, this is why immigration reform never happened under Obama either, because, you know, Republicans
about
have
10
always,
seconds.
the sweet spot has always been border security and immigration reform.
Rachel Campos-Duffy, thank you for doing that. Niger Innes, thank you. We appreciate it. Good to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. Good night from New York.